Hello, and welcome to the Argyle CXUX Leadership Forum. My name is Nick with Argyle, and it's great to have everyone joining us today. I have some important information to share with you, and then we'll turn the floor over to our esteemed opening keynote speaker. First, we would like to take a moment to thank today's sponsor, Zoom. Our sponsors are committed to providing you with valuable content and a great overall experience. At any time during today's event, you can visit their virtual booths from the main agenda page, which include complimentary materials, information, and meet and greet opportunities. We also welcome you to stay socially connected during today's event. For those of you who are active tweeters, please use the hashtag Argyle Digital and follow us on Twitter at Argyle Exec Forum. Also, be sure to follow Argyle on LinkedIn for special announcements. I would like to take a moment to touch on our content neutrality policy, which we have curated based on the feedback we have received over the years from our members. We have worked closely with our speaking faculty to ensure that you receive a set of balanced and neutral viewpoints during the session today, and we appreciate our members' support of this policy. Finally, and most importantly, we want to hear from you. So during each session, we encourage you to submit your questions and comments in the Q&A box on your screen. Following each presentation, we have set aside time for our speakers to weigh in on your questions. Thank you again for joining us today. Now, let's get started. Without further ado, I would like to introduce Drea Jackson, Vice President of Experience and Design, M&T Bank. We are excited to have Drea for her opening keynote presentation titled Show Your Work, Maintaining Employment in UX in a Time of Layoffs. Welcome, Drea. Over to you.
Hi, thanks, Nick. Hello, everybody on the phone. It's nice to meet you. I'm going to tell you a little bit about me, but really a very little because I just don't really like introducing myself very much. But I've seen all these other people who have a slide like this, so I'm like, well, I guess I'll do one. I really have, I know it says here, I've worked in more industries than I can really recall. Like I've been in software, I've been in, I worked at a watch company, I worked for benchmarking and best practices companies. It's just been all over. I spent a long time in marketing, and then I transitioned into user experience and then eventually into service design. I'm currently working at M&T Bank, and that's located on the East Coast, and we are the 11th largest bank in the country. So let's see. I think one of the thing that attracted me to user experience and service design is being an advocate for the user. Like I think that's incredibly important and gratifying to be kind of their champion, because so often end users get, particularly like enterprise employees, get left behind, and I really like to champion things for them. So, and I am obsessed with rewilding the wild. If you guys are interested in that, I guess find me on LinkedIn and I'll tell you all about it. So okay, let's get started. I don't know if this is necessarily, I don't know if I would specifically say that it's about staying employed, but it is more about talking to your business partners and understanding them and their needs, and all of that is going to help you keep your job. So, and I wanted to talk to you about like what to do when you're thrown into a situation where you literally have absolutely no idea what to do. And this is really a true story. Earlier this year, it happened to me. I am in a CX organization within my company, and we were completely reorganized in January. And I was moved from working with the wealth management team to the commercial bank. I was very, very comfortable with my wealth management partners. We've done a lot of work together. We've been there 2 years. Although I personally was a little ready to leave because they had already picked up human design thinking. Like they were working user interviews into all of their work. They had adopted a lot of the workshopping like materials and were working the way we needed them to work. So I'd understood that the commercial bank also needed some help with that. So I was excited about the challenge, but I was nervous. I was nervous about moving over there because I really had, I had heard that they were like a very tough crowd, that like they weren't really very happy with us. That was, but the word, what I understood was very like murky. Like, so I didn't know exactly what had happened before I got there, which is very important in your career to be thinking about. Like, don't go in there being all judgy, because you don't know how the software got the way that it got. You don't know what the relationship the designers had with the business partners before you. And you don't know what they don't know, and they don't know what you don't know. So it's just go in with an open mind. And I also was really excited personally about going into the commercial bank, because I knew that there were some really, really hard problems to solve. And that is very exciting to me. And I was also excited because one of my real passions, and I've talked about user experience, but what I am best equipped to do and why I moved into service design is to align design with business, and then helping them understand what we do and helping them become customer centric on their own. And I have seen in my career, this comes back to staying employed, I've seen design organizations disbanded because they just could not figure out how to provide value. And so to me, this really seemed like an interesting problem to solve within the bank. And so, you know, however I gotten it, but then like when I got there, I really had this what have I gotten myself into moment. Because I don't know if you've ever felt like this guy, but you're kind of thrown into the sea, and like this is how it went. Like, you're gonna go work with a commercial bank. You're a good swimmer. We know you're good. You're gonna just get on shore in a jiffy. And this is definitely how I felt. I was like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? My experience was just, that first month was complete insanity. I went from working with one team to working with 6 primary stakeholders. I felt like they all hated me. And the senior leaders within that area weren't aligned. And the peers, they were hostile towards each other, and they were hostile towards me. And I was like, oh my God. And so I just really didn't understand what was happening. And so I just kind of sat back and I started attending meetings, and I started trying to sluice and figure out kind of like what the politics were. But deep down inside, what were these teams trying to accomplish? I couldn't even get to what the customer was trying to accomplish, because I couldn't understand what our teams were trying to accomplish. So, so that was the beginning of it. And so I stepped back and put my designer hat on. And I started, like I said, I started by conducting investigations, and I learned where some of the hostility was coming from. In January, one of my sister teams had gone out and collected almost 1,000 pieces of feedback from frontline employees. And then they organized the learnings into 10, kind of like 10 operational and 4 experience priorities. And then they hadn't included anybody in the business really in doing this theming of the work. And that was pain, like they're like, why didn't you include us? This is what we do. So, that coupled with the primary executive sponsor was very action oriented. And he wanted us to focus on like that top 10 quick wins. I'm sure you guys have all heard of the quick wins. What can we do? What's the low hanging fruit? And it used to, quick wins that really actually used to get my cockles up. I'd be like, but now I really know that resistance is completely futile. And so I think of doing the quick wins as like opportunities to build trust. And once you've built that trust by doing these quick wins, you really are going to build the cover you need to kind of like to sneak in the strategic work, if that makes sense. So you have to do the quick wins and the strategic work at the same time. You cannot just skip quick wins and do the strategic work that you need to be done, needs to be done, because you're just not going to be winning any friends. So so we've got these top 10 quick wins, and we went ahead and put those into one work stream. I had a partner in crime with this. So we put those into one work stream, and then the other, we called it Service Sync. And that had been started in the November of 2022. And of course, came in 2023. And those teams that were doing the Service Sync, they'd already done a ton of work. Like at the same time we were doing our work, you guys get it, duplicate work happens all the time. And they'd come to pretty much the same conclusions as we had. They had set up work streams and created business case canvases. I don't know if y'all have seen those. But they included problem statements and hypotheses and just kind of like desired outcomes, scope, KPIs, resources, all that kind of stuff. I looked at them and I was like, this is not the way I would have done it. This is not the way that I would have framed all of this. The elements hadn't really been refined. But I made like a terrible mistake of questioning the work and not really understanding how much they'd already done. And, that they've been at it for so long. So I get why they didn't want me coming in and slowing things down. And that is really one of the biggest complaints about design, is that we slow things down. So, so here I am, the design team and their leadership questioning what they've been doing. Like there I am, I'm questioning what they've been doing for the last 3 months and telling them to drop, and then they've got someone else telling them to drop it all and do the quick wins. So like if I were that team, I really wouldn't be very happy to have design in there either. So at the same time, I did have a job to do. And I needed to convince these folks that we added value, and I needed to insert myself into their flow. And I needed to develop an actual backlog for the team to work, for my team to work. And at the same time, the design org as a whole actually didn't really have a defined intake process. So I was like, well, as a leader, I really felt like I see my role as providing a framework for, for intake. And since we didn't have one, I was like, well, we're going to build one. And so that's what you see here on this slide, was really looking at it. I personally like to do the first one and stress test it, and then we would embed it within the teams. And so we started the intake process. We basically had to start over. And we started over by doing the intake process with the needs assessment with each of the teams. We look and, like I say, needs assessment, it really is just stakeholder interviews. But that was like threatening. Even calling it stakeholder interviews was threatening because it felt like it was going backwards. So calling it a needs assessment really worked out. So we talked to them. We looked at those top 10 quick wins and the 6 service sync work streams. And then I split out the top 10 quick wins into like 3 buckets. And 4 of them actually were already being remediated. And they were mostly like business work, like data mapping and refunding customers. So those groups didn't like really need us. And so then a couple of them required some process engineering, like once we assessed it. And I was like, well, let's just give this to the process engineers, because that's what they do. An example I would say is like fraud. They had a bunch of manual processes in place to control risk, but some of the hoops were really, really cumbersome. And so they needed some updating. So our process engineers went in there and worked with them. So now we've got some stuff remediated and we've got some stuff process engineered. And then for the longer term items, I conducted some further investigation. And then this is where we actually we put out proposals that really aligned with what aligned us with those business canvases that I talked about earlier. So, and these proposals, super duper basic, you use them all the time. We, talked about always talked about how is the business being measured? Super important, because that's what they care about. Like, how are they being measured? And then let's say 30% of the frontline employees were dissatisfied with their resources. Like, that was very common. Our frontline people did not have the resources they needed. So, we made sure that as we were creating these proposals, we put that in there as something that we wanted to help our business customers tackle. It's like, how do you improve that 30% to say 60%? Like, what do we need to do to get there? And then, I took their problem statements that they've had on their business cases and revised them to be more like a UX kind of problem statement. And then, of course, at this point, I'm involving all the folks that are involved in it. So, the employees really wanted to resolve customer problems fast, of course, frontline. So we'd observed that we can't do these things for certain reasons. And if we did these things, it would make people happier. I tried to marry the problem statement with the business objectives, and I tried to make them based on the current state metrics. So I hope you see how all of this is kind of building together. And then at the last point, what we did is, we took the business objectives and we aligned them with the CX research objectives, and came up with a project plan. And that project plan included a bunch of design activities, and doing surveys and doing a diary study and this and that and the other. And it really made them have this aha moment and say wow, you guys have tools that help us achieve our goals. And these tools will also help the customer. At this point, it was an internal customer, do what they need to do. This is where we got pulled into all this work. We had no idea what was going on. Got to the point where we just had to sit back and listen. This is where I was talking about, is just investigating the information that we discovered and separating it into these operational priorities, which were much more tactical, and the experience priorities. And then, at this point, this is where we were separating out, what can we do? What's remediation? What's process engineering? And then once we discovered, we split all those things out. We created these, basically the what I was talking about, the proposals. And so this is the intake, like I said, going back, this is the intake process that we put together, splitting those things out. My God, I apologize. This was so much better when all the slides were together. Anyway, so like I said, what we really did after remediation, short-term engineering, was that deep dive, right? We looked at the things that really needed a deep dive look. And that's where we built that plan. And that's where we really got the buy-in from our internal customers, because we were able to tie what we were doing to what they were trying to accomplish. These are the elements of the proposal that I was talking about. So, the current state, looking at their current state metrics, looking at their problem statement, redoing their problem statement in a more user-friendly kind of thought process, looking at their business objectives, and then aligning ours around theirs. What are our research objectives that enable the business objectives? And like I said, the project plan was actually all UX research kind of activities. And then at the end, we did deliver everything that they needed. In this particular case, we took internal customer satisfaction with the resources. We did an internal helpline pilot, and we increased their satisfaction from, I think it was really more like 50% to 80% in this pilot. And so you were able to make the business case that, hey, we can make our customers' lives easier if we simply, if we our internal customers easier, and by extension, our customers, if we just help them find the information they need. So these are the items that I was talking about that were in the deliverables. we did the employees, we did diary study, we analyzed the data. I created a service blueprint. We asked for customer satisfaction at the very end. And then I don't believe we actually got to the design sprint, but they were able to make their business case to move to the next level and implement a full-time team. So, whew, that was a summary. And those are my slides. I don't know. I guess, are there any questions? Again, I apologize so much. I will send out the slides and hopefully it will all make sense.
Yeah, sure. Actually, Drea, there are a few questions from the audience if you want to take them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. So first question, our UX team is jittery to the point of distraction about their job security. Do you have any advice for us?
Well, I would go back to what is the problem you're trying to solve. And at this case, this is your problem at the point. What is the problem you're trying to solve? If you're afraid of losing your job, why is that? Maybe do some 5 whys and then build a plan for changing your direction is like how I would probably approach it. And then in that, talk to the people you're working with, do an internal customer satisfaction survey. Are they happy? If they're not happy, how do you make them happy? And again, what are, like I was just talking about, what are their business objectives? Stop worrying about being a designer. Worry about being a partner to your internal customers and your I'm assuming you're working with developers and your POs and that kind of thing. That would be my recommendation.
Great. Here's another question. What's the biggest mistake you've seen UX professionals make in trying to demonstrate their value to their employer? And how do they get past it?
I will tell you, I was just thinking about this the other day. I think there are two approaches to UX. And I was in a meeting the other day and someone was talking about basically trying to break down the wall, right? They were starting to work with the developers and their POs, and they were like, yeah, we had almost like a coming to Jesus kind of meeting with them and told them what we need to do. And I was like, trying to break down that wall. And I see it more as infiltration. You need to get in there. You need to become a part of their body. You don't try to break down their body, become part of it and improve it. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's been kind of my secret sauce, is to not try to break down the wall, because that just pisses people off. So I hope that helps. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, great. Okay, here's another question. How can UX professionals position themselves to be more competitive in a job market that may soon be glutted with UX talent?
In your portfolio, I'm sure people have told you all kinds of stuff that you need to do with your portfolio. I would make sure that, like I was just saying, in that project that I worked on, the goal was to increase the customers, it was employees, increase employee satisfaction by literally, it was like 50%. So if you can tie a number like that, obviously 50 is a lot, but if you can tie a number like that to your work that you did within an organization, then do it. And put that onto your proposal, or put that onto your portfolio and say, like, dude, I did this work. And let's go with an interaction, right? Like, so you've got like a form that people are filling out and they're getting stuck on this particular field. You make some kind of an adjustment. And at that point, that field that, people are gliding through, they're gliding through. And so you can go in and you can say, originally we had like a 15% conversion rate. Now I've got a 25% conversion rate because I made that change.
Okay, here's another one.
How do you think the UX field will evolve over the next, say, 2 to 3 years?
Mm. Well, truthfully, and what I have seen, and you guys want to really consider this, is a move away from calling yourself a designer. Um, Definitely try to, like move away. Think of yourself more as a problem solver, and but you can solve all kinds of problems, right? Like the tools you have are not just tools for digital. I mean, your tools that you have are for solving any kind of problem. So imagine, like, I don't know about you guys, but I like to go out and be like, why is there a sign out there that says, like, no crossing for blah, 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 and it's orange? Like, if it's no crossing, why isn't it red? So maybe go find some unusual problems to go and look and solve, and think outside of the UI world. Start thinking out, thinking about the whole world. That's personally why I like service design. So that would be a way. Definitely diversify. I know AI is talked about a lot. I literally am not. I'm not an expert on that, so I would not ask me about that. But I'm trying to figure it out too.
Good. And those are the audience questions so far. Do you have anything you want to add before we close it out, Drea?
Um, I guess it would just be, what would I say? Like I said, be empathetic to everyone. Don't try to hammer what you know over somebody else's head. Meet your customer where they're at. And usually when I'm talking about customer, I'm talking about your internal customer. Definitely your external customer is important too, but you can't reach them if you can't reach your internal customers. So just have a lot of sympathy and empathy for all of them, and figure out what's in it for them, what matters to them, and make sure that you align to that. And once you're aligned to that, you can bring them to your side.
Okay, great. Well, thank you again, Drea, for an excellent keynote. I also want to thank everyone else for joining us today. This session, along with all of today's content, will be available on demand following the event. Have a great day, everybody.